After I won the lottery, my parents demanded I give half the prize to my sister, saying it was her right and that she needed it more. My parents always made it clear, I was second. Second priority, second thought, second everything. But the day they tried to bleed me dry for my sister, I finally drew a line, and it changed my entire life. Growing up, it wasn't just a feeling, it was a daily, painful reality, with birthday presents that cost half as much as my sister's and permission granted to her automatically, but for me, it was always a negotiation. I saw the way my parents' faces would light up when she walked into a room, while I'd get a polite, almost absent-minded nod, and it stung every single time. When my sister turned 18, she got a brand new car, but I was 21 then, taking 2 buses and a train to my call center job, then straight to evening engineering classes, a 90-minute commute each way, 3 transfers, and if I missed a connection, I'd lose my attendance bonus. Sometimes, she'd drive right past my bus stop, windows down, music blaring, heading to the gym or the mall, a deliberate, casual cruelty. She never worked a day during college, her private university tuition, housing, sorority fees, and spring break trips all fully funded by our parents. Meanwhile, I went to state school, working full-time at that call center during the day, waiting tables at night, and accumulating a crushing $43,000 in student loans that grew faster than I could pay them down. The interest alone was $87 a month, so I was working just to give the bank money for the privilege of educating myself, which felt like an insult. After graduation, I landed a junior engineer role at a consulting firm. The salary was modest, but it was steady, and I moved back home, paying $300 a month in rent to sleep in my childhood bedroom. My sister, then 23, lived across the hall, in a bigger room, rent-free, and when I dared to ask why, my mother, with a placating smile, said my sister was still finding herself, as if I'd found myself at 21, but she needed more time, and the sheer audacity of it burned. Over 3 months, I poured my soul into developing a business plan for my own consulting practice. It was meticulous, thorough, with market research, financial projections, and licensing requirements, and I needed $12,000 in startup capital. I went to my parents, loan proposal in hand, complete with a repayment schedule and interest, but my father flipped through maybe 3 pages, not even reading, just glancing at charts like abstract art, then he laughed. "You should focus on finding a stable husband," he said, still chuckling. "Engineering is fine for a paycheck, but don't get ambitious." My mother nodded, adding, "Your sister has the real business sense in the family. Some people are just born for entrepreneurship." My ambition, my hard work, my meticulously planned future, all dismissed with a dismissive chuckle, and the words cut deeper than any insult. 3 months later, they emptied their savings, $47,000, not for me, but for my sister's clothing boutique, in a district where 3 other boutiques had already failed. The launch party was lavish, catered food, a champagne fountain. My father gave a teary-eyed speech about my sister's vision and dedication, how they'd always known she had a special spark, and he didn't mention my rejected loan. I worked that party, not as a guest, but as serving staff, through the catering company, because I needed the $50, carrying shrimp puffs to people discussing how wonderful it was to see young people following their dreams. Standing there, invisible, serving food to the very people who denied me, felt like a special kind of hell. That Friday, I started buying lottery tickets, $2 a week at the corner store, same numbers every time, my birthday, my graduation date, the address of the apartment I hope to afford someday. 1 in 4 million odds, but somebody eventually won, so why not me? It was a dark, private ritual, a tax I paid the universe for the possibility of escape. My sister's boutique crashed immediately, with wrong inventory, incompetent staff, and $3,000 a month in rent against maybe $300 in weekly sales. The math was catastrophic, but my parents kept funding it, kept insisting it just needed time. Months blurred together, call center during the day, engineering work in the evenings, serving shifts on weekends. The debt followed me everywhere, a shadow that grew despite minimum payments. I calculated obsessively. If I paid $500 monthly, debt-free at 38, $700 monthly, maybe 35, but that meant no savings, no emergency fund, no life beyond work and debt. On a Friday in November, I bought my usual ticket, then walked home in the pouring rain because I'd missed my bus. My shoes were soaked through, my hair plastered down. "You look like something the cat dragged in," my mother remarked when I came through the door. Dinner was tense, my sister's face was blotchy from crying about the boutique, my parents exchanged weighted, anxious looks. I went to my room at 8, and the lottery drawing was at 9. Out of habit, I pulled up the website, watched the numbers roll. First number matched. Second matched. Third. Fourth. Fifth. Sixth. All of them. Every single one. I stared at the screen for maybe 10 minutes, time becoming strange and elastic, checked the ticket a dozen times, certain I was misreading, checked the date, the website, compared numbers forwards and backwards. 6 for 6. $1,500,000. I didn't sleep that night, just sat in my room, holding the ticket, watching hours pass, trying to understand that I hadn't just won money, I'd accidentally bought my freedom. The next morning, I was at the lottery office when they opened. Staff verified everything. Legitimate. The money would deposit electronically in 10 business days. They required a photo shoot with a ceremonial check, and I held the ridiculous cardboard prop and smiled for cameras, a secret burning behind my eyes. I went to work like normal, sat through meetings, acted like nothing had changed, and told nobody. The ticket went into my wallet, the only copy of the validation paperwork locked in my car's glove box. I remember the metallic taste of triumph and terror. That evening, I got home around 6. My parents were in the living room with my sister, discussing the boutique's latest crisis, financial statements spread across the coffee table, a calculator nearby. My sister's face was, predictably, blotchy from crying. I walked past them, heading for the stairs. "We need to talk," my father said. His voice had that tone, the one that meant he was about to ask for something, command masquerading as a request. I stopped, turned. They were all looking at me with expressions I couldn't quite read. Desperate, calculating, rehearsed. "Your sister's business is in serious trouble," my mother said, using her gentle, coaxing voice. "The landlord is threatening eviction. She needs $15,000 by next week, or she loses everything." I waited, saying nothing, letting them fill the silence. "We don't have it," my father added, spreading his hands as if this was a shared problem we all owned. "We've put in everything we can, but you have your engineering job now. And you don't have any real expenses, living here. You could take out a personal loan," my mother quickly suggested. "We'll pay you back once the boutique turns around. With interest, if you want. We just need help getting through this rough patch." My sister sat there crying, quiet tears running down her face, the strategic kind, the ones that came when she needed something. She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "Please. I'm drowning. I know we haven't always been fair to you, but I'm begging you. Don't let me lose everything." "No," I said. Simple, clear, final. The room went silent. They looked at each other, surprised. This wasn't in their script. "What do you mean, no?" My father's voice rose, frustration cracking through his reasonable facade. "This is your sister. Family helps family. I mean, I'm not taking out a loan to fund a failing business," I said, keeping my voice level. "The math doesn't work. It's never worked. $15,000 now just delays the inevitable by 3 months. How dare you?" My mother stood up, her voice shaking with genuine anger now. "After everything we've done for you. We raised you, fed you, gave you a home, and charged me rent for my childhood bedroom while she lives for free, I interrupted. And paid for her entire college while I drowned in debt. And gave her $47,000 for a business after refusing me $12,000 for mine. That's different, my father snapped. Your sister she needed what, exactly? I pressed, my voice still dangerously calm. A vanity project. A store in a district where 3 other boutiques already failed. Inventory she chose based on what looked pretty instead of what sells. You've always been jealous of me, my sister wailed, her voice rising to match the others. You can't stand to see me succeed. You've been bitter and resentful since we were kids. You're not succeeding, I said, gesturing at the financial statements on the table. You're failing spectacularly, and I'm not funding it. We're family, my mother tried again, a different angle. That means something, or it should. We stick together through hard times. Where was that philosophy when I needed $12,000? I asked, my voice finally cracking with a lifetime of pent-up anger. When I showed you a detailed business plan with market research and projections. Where was it sticking together then? That was different, my father repeated, louder now. You were unproven. Your sister had vision. Vision? I laughed, sharp and bitter. She had your money and no consequences. That's not vision. That's privilege. And it's not my job to fund it anymore. If you don't help your sister, my father stood up now, using his full height like it mattered, you can get out of this house tonight. I mean it. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the desperation behind the anger. They'd burned through their savings, taken out loans, exhausted every option. I was the last source of money they could access. And I was saying no. Okay, I said. Calm, even. Not angry, just decided. I'll be gone by morning. My mother's face went pale. You don't mean that. We're just talking about a loan. No, I corrected, you're talking about control. You're talking about me sacrificing for her again, just like I've been doing my whole life. And I'm done. If you walk out that door, my father said, his voice hard, that's it. You're not welcome back. Good, I said. That saves me the effort of cutting you off. My sister started sobbing louder. You're destroying this family. Everything is falling apart, and you don't even care. Everything was already destroyed, I said quietly. You just didn't notice because you were the one benefiting from it. I turned and headed for the stairs. We'll call your work, my mother cried, desperate now. We'll tell everyone what you're really like. Selfish, cruel, ungrateful. Do it, I said, without turning around. Call whoever you want. Tell them whatever makes you feel better. I'm still leaving. I went upstairs and started packing. Below, I heard them arguing, voices rising and falling, my mother crying now, my father's voice loud and angry, my sister's wails, the sound of a family imploding. And I, for the first time, felt strangely free. Finally. Irrevocably. I packed methodically, documents first, things I couldn't replace, laptop, chargers, work files, clothes and toiletries. Everything I truly needed fit in one duffel bag and a backpack. 26 years in that house, and I could walk away with 2 bags. I came back downstairs 15 minutes later. They'd moved, to blocking the stairs this time, all 3 of them, a human barricade. We're not done talking about this, my father said. Yes, we are. I walked straight at them. My father stood his ground for maybe 3 seconds, then stepped aside. Whatever authority he thought he had evaporated in that moment. They all moved. Actually moved. Let me pass. I walked through the living room, past the coffee table still covered in my sister's failed business statements, past the photos on the wall of family vacations I barely appeared in, past the whole curated life they'd built that had never really included me. "You'll regret this," my father called after me. I stopped at the door, turned back to look at them one last time. My mother crying on the couch, my sister curled up next to her, my father standing rigid, face red with anger and humiliation. "No," I said. "I really won't." And I left through the front door of my childhood home, carrying 2 bags and 26 years of resentment. And I didn't look back. I found a furnished studio that night, month to month, $900, small and generic, but it was mine. Nobody charging me rent to exist. Nobody judging my choices. I signed the lease, paid first month and deposit with my credit card, got the keys. The next 9 days were the longest of my life. I worked my job, checked my bank account every few hours, waiting for the deposit that would change everything. My phone rang constantly, my parents, my sister, unknown numbers that were probably them using other phones. I didn't answer any of it. Day 9. Tuesday morning at 6:43. The deposit appeared, $1,500,000, minus taxes and fees, $942,183.36. In an account that had contained $812 the day before. I sat on my apartment floor and cried. Actually cried, the kind of gasping sobs I hadn't allowed myself in years. Not from happiness, exactly, but from relief. From the release of a pressure I'd carried so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to breathe without it. My first action was the student loans, $43,000 paid in one transaction. Balance dropped to zero. Decades of future interest disappeared with a click. Then I called a financial advisor, a fee-only consultant who didn't work on commission. She walked me through everything. We put 70% into conservative investments, boring funds that would grow slowly over decades. The rest into high-yield savings for business costs and emergencies. I bought equipment for my consulting practice, a good laptop, software licenses, professional tools. Then I dug out my business plan from months ago, the one my parents had dismissed, and started updating it. By the way, if you're still with me, make sure to hit subscribe, more unbelievable stories are coming. But my phone wouldn't stop ringing. 50 calls the first week. Voicemails that cycled through rage, guilt, and begging. My mother's first voicemail was crying, "How can you do this to us? We're your family. Your sister is having a breakdown. She's talking about hurting herself. You need to call me back right now." My father's was angry, "You think you're too good for us now? You think that money makes you better? You'll regret this. Family is everything and you're throwing it away." My sister's was desperate, "Please. I'm sorry for everything. I know I was spoiled. I know I messed up. Just talk to me. Just give me a chance to explain. I need you." I listened to the first few, then stopped. Deleted them without listening. There was nothing they could say that would change anything. They'd had 26 years to treat me fairly. They'd chosen not to. Their crisis now wasn't my responsibility. I blocked every number I recognized. They started calling from other phones. I'd answer unknown numbers, thinking it was a potential client, hear my mother's voice, and hang up immediately. Blocked those numbers, too. They started leaving voicemails on my work phone, the number listed on my business website. I had to change it. Update all my marketing materials. Notify existing clients of the new contact information. The calls came at all hours, 3 a.m., my phone buzzing on the nightstand. 7 at night, during dinner. 10 in the morning, during client meetings. I'd see unknown local numbers and have to make split-second decisions. Could be a client, could be my family. I started letting everything go to voicemail, calling back numbers that left legitimate business messages. Then they showed up at my old engineering job, the firm I'd left to go independent. My mother walked into the office reception area asking for me. The receptionist, confused, called the person who'd taken my old position. That person called me, warned me that my mother was making a scene in their lobby, claiming a family emergency, demanding my contact information. I thanked them for the heads up, said to tell security she wasn't welcome. They did. My mother apparently waited in the lobby for 3 hours, insisting she wouldn't leave until I came out. Security finally escorted her out, told her not to return or they'd call the police for trespassing. She must have followed someone from that office because 2 days later, they found my apartment. I lived in a secure building, needed a key fob to enter. They couldn't get past the lobby, so they waited outside the main entrance. I came home from a work site at 7 in the evening and found all 3 of them standing by the door. "We need to talk," my father said, moving to block my path. I stepped around him, pressed my key fob to the reader, pulled the door open. "Don't you walk away from us," he shouted, his voice rising. "We're your parents. You owe us a conversation." "I don't owe you anything." I went inside, let the door close behind me. They couldn't follow without a key fob. I heard them shouting through the glass. Other residents passed them in the lobby, looking uncomfortable. Someone must have called building security because 10 minutes later, they were gone. The building manager emailed me the next morning. She'd received complaints about people harassing a resident. Could I come by the office? I explained the situation, estranged family, no contact wanted. She added their names to a no trespass list. Updated security to refuse them entry. She was apologetic, understanding, said she'd had to cut off her own mother years ago. Understood how difficult it was. The messages kept coming, from new numbers. Texts now, since I wasn't answering calls. Long paragraphs about family obligation. "You're killing your sister. She's not eating. She's not sleeping. Her therapist says she's at risk. If something happens to her, it's your fault. We raised you, fed you, clothed you, put a roof over your head. You wouldn't exist without us. This is how you repay that, with cruelty and abandonment. God will judge you for this. You're committing a sin against your family. The money you won is blood money now because you're using it to hurt the people who love you. I'm sick. I have a heart condition. The stress you're causing is making it worse. If I have a heart attack, my blood is on your hands." I set my phone to only allow contacts. Unknown numbers couldn't get through anymore. The messages stopped appearing, but I knew they were still being sent, piling up somewhere in digital limbo, screaming into a void I'd created. My email was next. They figured out my work address from my business website. Messages landed in my inbox. Subject lines designed to look like business inquiries, consulting opportunity, open to my mother's words about how I was destroying the family. Infrastructure project inquiry was my sister begging for money. Request for quote was my father threatening legal action. I set up email filters. Everything from their addresses went straight to trash, unread. I created rules for keywords they used: family, sister, forgiveness, obligation. Any email containing those words from an unknown sender went to trash. I was probably missing legitimate business emails, but it was worth it for the peace. They tried to friend me on social media. I had minimal presence, just a professional page for my business with project photos and client testimonials. No personal information, no posts about my life. They couldn't comment publicly without me approving at first, but they tried to send direct messages. I blocked them, made my settings as private as possible. Then they went to people we both knew, former neighbors, distant relatives, people I'd gone to high school with. These people would reach out, casual at first. "Hey, haven't talked to you in forever. How are you doing?" I'd respond politely. Then, "Your mom reached out to me. She's really worried about you. She said you won the lottery and cut them off." That seems harsh. They're your parents. I'd stop responding. Block them if they persisted. One of my sister's college friends tracked down my business email. She sent a long message about how my sister was in a dark place, how she'd lost weight, how she talked about not wanting to live anymore. The friend said she understood family dynamics were complicated, but could I at least check in, just once, just to make sure my sister was okay? I deleted it. If my sister was genuinely suicidal, my parents could get her professional help. That wasn't my responsibility, especially when I suspected the suicide talk was manipulation, a tactic to guilt me into contact. They tried showing up at my apartment building twice more. Security turned them away both times. On their third attempt, they waited across the street, hoping to catch me coming or going. I spotted them from my window, called security preemptively. 2 guards went out and told them to leave or they'd call the police for stalking. My father argued, said a public sidewalk meant they could stand there. The guard said harassing residents was grounds for police involvement regardless of location. They left. I focused on my business with laser intensity. I pulled out the business plan I'd created months ago, the one my father had dismissed, updated the market analysis, refined the financial projections, built out my service offerings. Everything I'd outlined was still viable, more so now that I had capital to execute properly. I reached out to former colleagues from my junior engineer days. Sent professional emails explaining I'd gone independent. Attached my credentials and rate sheet. 3 responded within a week. 1 had a lead on a municipal contract, a small city that needed infrastructure assessment. Would I be interested? I bid $35,000 for 8 weeks of work. They countered at $20,000 for 6 weeks. I took it. I needed the portfolio piece more than the money. The project was a water system analysis, evaluating pipe integrity across 12 miles of residential infrastructure. I spent 3 weeks on site, measuring flow rates, testing water quality, documenting weak points. I used my waste management optimization system, the methodology I developed for my senior thesis, adapted for water instead of sewage. It identified problem areas the city hadn't known existed. My report ran 97 pages, with maps, data tables, prioritized repair recommendations, and cost-benefit analyses for each intervention. I delivered it 5 days early. The city manager called me personally to say it was the most comprehensive infrastructure report they'd ever received. They'd budgeted for repairs based on my recommendations. And would I be interested in a follow-up contract to oversee implementation? Yes. Yes, I would. That implementation contract was $45,000 over 4 months. While managing it, I got a referral from the city manager to another municipality 2 counties over. They had the same problem with aging infrastructure, had heard about my work, wanted a similar analysis. $50,000 for their project because they had more pipe mileage. My third client came from a former colleague at my old engineering firm. He'd moved to a consulting company, and they needed someone for overflow work, environmental impact assessment for a proposed development. $30,000, 6 weeks. I took it, delivered on time, and got asked for 3 more projects over the next 6 months. By month 3, I had 4 active clients and 2 more in the pipeline. Revenue was $12,000 monthly, exceeding what I'd earned as a junior engineer. I was working more hours, absolutely. 10-hour days weren't unusual, but every hour was mine. Every client was my choice. Every dollar I earned was mine to keep or invest or spend without asking permission or paying rent to exist. The business plan my parents had rejected was working exactly as I'd projected. Actually, exceeding my conservative estimates. Turned out I did have business sense after all. Turned out I was born for entrepreneurship. Turned out they'd been completely wrong about me. But my family wouldn't stop. They figured out my work email somehow. Messages landed in my inbox. My mother's words carefully crafted to sound reasonable. Just asking for a conversation. Just wanting to understand. Just hoping we could work through this as a family. I set up an email filter. Everything from their addresses went straight to trash, unread. The boutique closed after 10 months. I found out from a former neighbor who emailed me, thinking I'd want to know. My sister had apparently had some kind of breakdown. According to the gossip, my parents had lost their entire savings. They'd taken out a home equity loan to cover the last few months of rent and were now struggling with payments. Good, I thought. Let them struggle. Let them calculate how many years until they break even. Let them lie awake doing math. Let them feel what I felt for 6 years. 3 months after I left, a letter arrived. Physical mail, hand addressed to my apartment. My mother's handwriting. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won. 3 pages, single-spaced, a masterclass in manipulation. It started with understanding, respect for my independence, pride in how responsibly I was handling my life. Then shifted to my sister's situation. The boutique had closed, she was devastated and depressed, in therapy, on medication. They were worried about her mental state. She needed help they couldn't provide alone. Then came the childhood memories. Remember the beach that summer? Remember Christmas when you were 12? Remember game nights? She acknowledged mistakes and how they treated me. But family meant accepting imperfections and moving forward together. The ask came on page 3. Not for lottery money directly, but for a loan, $20,000 to help my sister pay off business debts and start fresh in a new city. They'd pay me back over 5 years with interest, if I wanted. Just this once, just a bridge through the current crisis. Then they'd never ask again. I read the whole thing standing in my hallway. Read it twice to catch every angle, every carefully chosen word. Then I tore it in half, in quarters, into small pieces that went into the trash. I didn't respond, didn't call, didn't write back. Silence was my answer. 2 weeks later, another letter, shorter this time. My sister had written it, her handwriting messier than our mother's. She apologized for everything, said she'd been spoiled and selfish, that she understood now how lucky she'd been. She claimed she was in therapy, working on herself. She just needed one more chance, one loan to start over, and she'd prove she'd changed. That one went into the trash unopened after I recognized the handwriting. Month 4, a third letter. My father this time. My father, angry, called me ungrateful, selfish, cruel, said I'd inherited their bad luck, that the lottery was family money, that morally and possibly legally I owed them. Threatened to consult a lawyer. I actually laughed at that one. Let him consult a lawyer. Let him spend money he didn't have to learn that lottery winnings are individual property. That letter went in the trash, still creased from the envelope. The letter stopped after that. The unknown number calls stopped. Either they'd given up, or they'd run out of money for stamps and phone cards. I didn't care which. My business kept growing. A municipal contract turned into 3 more municipalities. A referral from one client brought 2 additional projects. I raised my rates. My calendar filled up. I hired a part-time admin to handle scheduling and invoicing. 6 months after leaving, I moved to a better apartment. 2 bedrooms, dishwasher, balcony overlooking the city. I used the second bedroom as a proper office, desk facing the window, professional setup for video calls with clients. The engineering project I'd done for my senior thesis, the waste management optimization system that earned highest marks in program history, I'd refined it into a proprietary methodology. 3 of my contracts specifically requested that system. I bought a car. Nothing fancy, just reliable transportation so I could visit work sites without planning around bus schedules. The day I drove it off the lot, I thought about my sister getting her car at 18, how bitter I'd felt watching her drive past my bus stops. That bitterness was gone now. I didn't want what she'd been given. I wanted what I'd built myself. The year mark arrived. 12 months since the lottery, since I'd walked out, since I'd started over. My business had 15 active clients. Revenue was triple my old engineering salary. My investment accounts had grown 7%. I'd taken a weekend trip to the coast, stayed in a nice hotel, ate at restaurants without checking prices first. I'd made friends at a networking group for independent consultants, people who understood the challenges of running your own business, who celebrated contracts won and commiserated over difficult clients. They didn't know about the lottery. They knew me as someone who'd left a corporate job to start a practice, which was true enough. The lottery was just startup capital, the lucky break that let me jump sooner than I'd planned. Sometimes I thought about my family. Not missing them exactly, but wondering, was my sister working somewhere? Had my parents downsized their house to manage the equity loan? Had they accepted that I was gone? Or did they still talk about me at dinner, spinning narratives where I was the villain? I didn't search for answers. Didn't drive past the old house or look them up on social media. That life was finished. A book I'd closed and shelved. Some chapters you don't need to reread. Year 2 brought growth I'd once considered impossible. Annual revenue hit $300,000. Not all profit, of course, overhead and taxes and admin costs consumed about 40%. But still, $300,000. More money than my parents probably earned in their best years combined. More than I'd dared project in my original business plan. I hired my first full employee, a recent engineering graduate named Kira, who reminded me of myself at 22. Brilliant test scores, solid technical skills, swimming in student debt. She'd interviewed at 6 firms and gotten lowball offers from all of them. I offered her $55,000 annually, plus benefits and retirement matching. She cried during the phone call when I made the offer. I told her she'd work hard, but she wouldn't work nights and weekends. That she'd be treated as a professional, not an entry-level drone. That I'd teach her everything I knew about running projects, managing clients, building a reputation. She didn't need to work serving shifts or ride buses for 3 hours daily. She could focus on engineering. 6 months in, she brought in her first client. A former professor had a consulting side business and needed overflow help. Kira pitched him on our firm, showcased the projects she'd been involved in, negotiated a $30,000 contract. I let her take lead engineer on it, supervised from a distance, let her build her confidence. She delivered perfectly. I've never felt valued at a job before, Kira told me after that project closed. Every other place treated me like I was disposable, like I should be grateful for minimum wage and maximum hours. This is different. I just nodded, uncomfortable with gratitude, but pleased I could provide what I'd needed at her age. The municipal contract that had started everything, that first $20,000 project, led to something bigger, a state-level opportunity. Infrastructure assessment across 12 counties. 18-month timeline. Budget of $400,000. The RFP came through a recommendation from that first city manager, the one who'd been impressed with my 97-page report. I spent 3 weeks on the proposal. Brought in 2 subcontractors I'd worked with before, engineers I trusted. Outlined methodology, timeline, deliverables, qualifications. Used every project I'd completed as evidence of competence. The proposal ran 83 pages. We won it. Beat out 2 much larger firms. The state engineer who called with the news said our technical approach was superior and our past performance spoke for itself. I thanked him professionally, ended the call, sat in my office looking at the contract value on my screen. $400,000. My share after subcontractors would be $270,000 over 18 months. I could live for 3 years on that profit. Could invest it, let it compound, build security that would last decades. The lottery money sat mostly untouched in investments, growing quietly. My business income was covering all my expenses and then some. I was building wealth from 2 sources, doubling down on financial security. Kira and I worked that state contract together, traveled to site visits in 12 different counties, tested infrastructure, documented findings, built comprehensive reports for each location. It was exhausting, detail-intensive work that required precision and patience. But it was satisfying in ways my old call center job never was. This work mattered. These reports would guide millions in infrastructure spending, would keep water systems safe, would prevent catastrophic failures. We delivered on month 17, a month ahead of schedule. The final report ran 342 pages with appendices, maps, data tables, cost projections, prioritized recommendations. The state engineer called it the most thorough infrastructure analysis they'd ever commissioned. They wanted to hire us for a follow-up implementation contract. Yes, I said. Absolutely. Yes. My business grew a reputation, thorough, reliable, worth the premium pricing. I didn't bid cheap. I bid fair for excellent work, and clients paid because they got what they paid for. Other engineers sometimes complained I was driving up price expectations. Good, I thought. Maybe if clients paid fair rates, engineers wouldn't have to work 3 jobs to survive. I raised Kira's salary to $65,000 after that state contract closed. She'd earned it. Brought value well beyond her years of experience. She started talking about maybe taking night classes for a master's degree. I offered to pay for it, treat it as professional development. She cried again. I told her to stop crying at work, we had proposals to write. She laughed and got back to work. The governor's office sent a thank you letter. It sat framed on my office wall. Not because I cared about impressing clients, but because it represented something. Proof that the business plan my father had dismissed after 45 seconds was viable. Proof that the $12,000 loan they denied me, I hadn't actually needed from them. Proof that I'd been right and they'd been wrong, documented on official letterhead. Sometimes former neighbors or distant relatives would find my business email, send messages asking how I was doing, mentioning they'd heard about my success. I kept responses brief and professional. Yes, the business was going well. Yes, I was happy. No, I wasn't in contact with my parents. No, I didn't have plans to reach out. The conversation would die there, and they'd stop emailing. One message came from my sister's college roommate, someone I'd met twice. She said my sister had moved across the country, was working retail, seemed to be doing okay. She didn't ask me to reconcile or pass along contact information. Just thought I'd want to know. I appreciated that. The information without the agenda. Good for her, I thought. Genuinely, if she was working and supporting herself, that was growth. I didn't wish her harm. I just didn't wish her anything. She was a stranger who happened to share my DNA and childhood home. Nothing more. Year 3 brought changes I hadn't expected. A professional organization asked me to speak at their conference about innovative approaches to infrastructure analysis. Me, speaking at a conference. I said yes, prepared a presentation, delivered it to 200 engineers who asked intelligent questions and requested my contact information afterward. 5 new clients came from that conference. I bought a condo. Not huge, just 2 bedrooms, but mine. Actual equity building instead of rent disappearing. Mortgage payments slightly higher than my old rent, but every dollar bought me something tangible. I painted the walls colors I liked, hung art I'd chosen, created a space that felt like mine in ways my childhood bedroom never had. Dating happened eventually. I'd been too focused on survival and then business to think about relationships. But at 30, with a stable income and a life I'd built myself, it seemed like time. Nothing serious yet, just coffee dates and dinners, getting to know people without the desperation of needing someone to save me. I was already saved. I'd saved myself. My employee, the young engineer I'd hired, came to me after 18 months asking about partnership possibilities. She'd brought in clients, managed projects independently, proved herself invaluable. We restructured the business, made her a junior partner with profit sharing. Her student loans were halfway paid off now. She told me once that working for me had changed her life, given her hope that success was possible without selling your soul or your time. I'd nodded and changed the subject, uncomfortable with gratitude, but pleased I could provide what I'd needed at her age. The business plan I'd created 3 years ago sat in my desk drawer, the printed copy my parents had barely glanced at. I pulled it out sometimes, reviewed the projections I'd made. I'd been conservative in my estimates, cautious, trying to make the numbers look safe and reasonable. Reality had exceeded every projection. Revenue was double what I'd forecast. Client retention was 15% higher. Profit margins were better because I'd negotiated smarter than I'd expected to manage. I'd been right. They'd been wrong. Simple as that. Year 4, I got a text from an unknown number. Just one line, "This is your sister. Can we talk?" I stared at it for several minutes. Blocked the number. Didn't respond. 10 minutes later, another text from a different unknown number, "Please. I'm not asking for money. I just want to apologize properly." Blocked that one, too. I changed my number after that. Gave the new one only to clients, colleagues, friends I'd made in the past few years. The people who knew the person I'd become, not the person I'd been forced to be. My financial advisor suggested I invest in real estate beyond my condo. Rental properties, diversification, building more passive income streams. We bought a small duplex in an appreciating neighborhood, fixed it up, rented both units to young professionals. Positive cash flow from month 1. The lottery money was still there, most of it growing in investments I barely touched. I lived off my business income, let the nest egg build itself through compound interest and market growth. At current trajectory, I'd have over $2 million by 40, $3 million by 50, more than I could spend in a lifetime, barring catastrophe. I set up a scholarship fund through my old state university. $20,000 annually for engineering students with demonstrated financial need. Anonymous donation, no name attached. I specified the fund should prioritize students working multiple jobs, students without family support, students who were fighting for their education without safety nets, students like I'd been. The scholarship administrator sent quarterly updates. This year's recipients, their stories, their gratitude. I read every report, saw myself in their circumstances, their determination, their exhaustion. My lottery ticket had bought my freedom. This scholarship might buy someone else's. At night, lying in my condo, in my bed that I'd bought with money I'd earned, I sometimes thought about that Friday evening 3 years ago. Walking home in the rain, soaked and cold and tired, sitting in my childhood bedroom watching 6 numbers align. The surreal moment when everything changed. People say money doesn't buy happiness. Those people have never been poor. Never calculated debt payoff timelines at 3 in the morning. Never chosen between groceries and textbooks. Money didn't buy my happiness. Money bought my freedom from misery, which created space where happiness became possible. The bitterness I'd carried for years was gone now. Not forgiven, not forgotten, just irrelevant. My family existed somewhere in the world, living their lives, dealing with their choices. I existed here, in the life I'd built, dealing with mine. We were separate, finally, completely, the way it should have been all along. I wasn't the second daughter anymore. I wasn't second priority or second anything. I was first and only in my own life, the protagonist of a story I was writing myself, and that was exactly enough. Last month, I landed a contract with a federal agency. Infrastructure assessment for a major metropolitan area. 2-year timeline. Budget of $1.3 million. My share after subcontractors and overhead would still exceed $500,000 in profit. The project would establish my firm as serious competition in the national market. Open doors to contracts I couldn't even bid on a year ago. The proposal I'd submitted ran 70 pages. Comprehensive analysis of methodology and capabilities. Case studies from my 12 best projects. References from happy clients. Documentation of my proprietary waste management optimization system. The same system that had started as a senior thesis. The same thesis my professor had said earned the highest grade in program history while I'd stood in that auditorium alone, holding an award plaque like an orphan. That thesis was now my competitive advantage. I'd refined it, expanded it, adapted it for multiple infrastructure types. 3 of my major contracts specifically requested that methodology by name. Something I'd created alone in my rented bedroom while working 2 jobs and drowning in debt had become the foundation of a business worth over $1 million annually. The federal agency called on a Tuesday afternoon. I was on a site visit, standing in mud evaluating a pipe junction when my phone rang. "We're pleased to offer you the contract," the project manager said. "Your proposal was the most thorough we received. Your track record speaks for itself. We're excited to work with you." I thanked him professionally, asked about next steps, timeline for contract signing, initial meeting schedules. We talked for 20 minutes about logistics and expectations. I took notes, standing in the mud, phone balanced on my shoulder, acting like this was normal, like $1 million contracts were routine. Inside, I was screaming. I ended the call. Stood there in the mud, looking at the pipe junction, the infrastructure that needed assessing, the work that had brought me from nowhere to here. Then I called Kira. "We got it," I said when she answered. "The federal contract. We got it." She screamed. Actually screamed loud enough that I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "Are you serious? Oh my God. Oh my God. This is huge. This is. We're legitimate now. This is national level legitimate." "Yeah," I said, smiling despite myself. "We are." We celebrated that night. Kira and I, and the 2 subcontractors I worked with most often. Dinner at a nice restaurant, the kind with cloth napkins and wine lists. I actually understood now. We toasted to hard work, to thorough proposals, to the slow, steady build of reputation that pays off eventually. I paid for dinner, $400 for 5 people, drinks and appetizers and entree and dessert. Left a 30% tip because I remembered being a server. Remembered what it meant when someone tipped well. $400 that once would have been my rent money. Now it was just dinner. Just celebration. Just the cost of acknowledging success. Walking back to my car after dinner, I thought about that lottery ticket. 3 years ago, Friday evening, $2 I couldn't afford. The universe had answered that $2 question with $900,000. And I'd turned that into a business worth over $1 million annually. The lottery money sat mostly untouched in investments now, growing through compound interest. I didn't need it. I was building something bigger than luck, something sustainable. But I was grateful for it. Grateful for the safety net that let me take risks. Grateful for the startup capital that meant I could bid properly instead of cheap and desperate. Grateful for the freedom from debt that let me think long-term instead of paycheck to paycheck. The lottery hadn't made me successful, but it had bought me the space to become successful on my own terms. I drove home through the city, windows down, night air cool, past the bus stop where I used to wait in the rain, transferring between routes, calculating arrival times and connection windows. Someone was standing there now, backpack heavy on their shoulders, face tired in the streetlight glow. I remembered being that person. Remembered the exhaustion and the calculations and the grinding awareness that you're working as hard as you can and it's still not enough. I couldn't stop at every bus stop and hand out lottery winnings, but I could pay my employee well. Could hire people and treat them fairly. Could build a business that proved success didn't require exploiting labor or crushing young engineers under debt and 60-hour weeks. I could be the kind of employer I'd wished existed when I was drowning. At home, I sat on my condo balcony with a glass of wine and my laptop. The federal contract timeline needed building. 2 years of work broken into phases, deliverables scheduled, resource allocation planned. I opened a spreadsheet and started drafting structure. This was my favorite kind of work, the planning stage, where you build the framework that everything else hangs on. Get this right, and the project flows smooth. Get it wrong, and you're fighting problems for months. My phone buzzed. Text from a number I didn't recognize. I'd gotten better about unknown numbers. Didn't panic anymore, assuming it was my family. This was probably a client or potential client. Someone who'd gotten my number from a referral. I opened the message. This is your sister. I know you don't want to hear from me. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. You were right about all of it. I'm working now, paying my own bills, learning what you dealt with all those years. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I finally understand. I read it 3 times. Sat with it. Felt nothing particular. No surge of vindication or softening or desire to reconnect. Just neutral acknowledgement that she had sent words into the void. I could respond. Could say something magnanimous about water under the bridge or growth or moving forward. Could be the bigger person, extend an olive branch, allow for the possibility of a future relationship. Or I could do nothing. Could let the message sit there unanswered. Acknowledge with my silence that understanding didn't equal reconciliation. That realizing you were wrong didn't automatically repair what you broke. That some doors, once closed, stay closed because that's healthier for everyone. I closed the message. Didn't block the number. Didn't respond. Just closed it and went back to my federal contract timeline. Maybe someday I'd feel different. Maybe someday the anger would fade enough that curiosity about my sister's life would emerge. Maybe. But not today. Today, I had a 2-year project to plan, a business to run, a life to live that was entirely mine. I'd worked too hard building this life to risk it on people who'd proven they'd only showed up when they wanted something. I'd bought a $2 lottery ticket every Friday for 3 years. $312 total spent on hope that most people would call foolish. $312 that turned into $900,000 that turned into $1 million business that turned into freedom. I couldn't have imagined when I was 21, riding buses and serving tables and calculating debt payoff timelines at 3 a.m. The universe had answered. Not because I deserved it or earned it specifically, but because sometimes random chance aligns with desperate hope. Sometimes the numbers come up. Sometimes the impossible happens. Sometimes you win. And when you win, you get to choose what you do with it. I'd chosen to build something real, something that couldn't be stolen or diminished or shared against my will. A business with my name on it. Clients who valued my work. An apartment with my name alone on the lease. Investments growing quietly toward a secure future. A reputation built on thorough work and fair dealing. Freedom measured in dollars and distance. And the absolute certainty that I never had to go back to being second priority, second daughter, second anything. I was first and only in my own life now. The protagonist of a story I was writing myself. And that was exactly enough. The federal contract spreadsheet glowed on my laptop screen, cells waiting to be filled with dates and deliverables and resource allocations. I took a sip of wine, set the glass down, put my hands on the keyboard, and started building the timeline that would carry me through the next 2 years of my life. Work I was good at. Work that mattered. My choices were extreme, and my family probably calls me cruel. But after years of being pushed aside, I had to choose myself. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you were in my shoes, would you have done the same? Or would you have found a way to forgive and reconnect? Let me know in the comments below.